Hello everybody, welcome back to more live coverage here. It's serverless video in the Expo Hall at AWS reInvent 2023. I'm here with Matthias, who certainly has the cloudiest jacket of the day. I think it's amazing. The only problem is I think if you live in Vegas, you don't really ever see clouds, so it's a bit weird. It's normally always blue skies. So people are like, what's a cloud in Vegas?
Yeah.
So you are like one of the founding original people of A Cloud Guru, who's literally taught me and the rest of the world a bunch about AWS. I did my first AWS certifications using A Cloud Guru. And so yeah, how did you get on this journey of training and teaching people? What is that story like?
Yeah, well, it's an interesting story. I wound up using A Cloud Guru myself originally because I found that they were really helpful for my learning journey and to flesh out my understanding of AWS. But I saw that a lot of the people around me weren't necessarily succeeding with their journeys. So they understood the technology, but they didn't know where to start, how to deal with their learning, how to study effectively, how to deal with the exams.
So I find you sometimes have a niche and you learn on that and you realize you don't sort of know the basics and everything. And that's what I liked about A Cloud Guru. It was really good fundamentals that it taught you.
It was really accessible and accommodating, right? Like anyone could jump into it. And so I met the people from A Cloud Guru at reInvent 2016 and said, hey, you need a course that helps people on that sort of stuff. And they said, okay, well, you make it. And so I did, and I wound up joining them and making courses and then eventually making videos. Yeah, it was an interesting journey. So
fantastic. And now you're doing some other exciting different things. Tell us about that.
Well, I mean, I have been jumping into machine learning recently, and so got my machine learning specialty because I know that machine learning is such a super important part of how we build systems these days, right? But I've also really been jumping into a lot more of the serverless stuff, just to really enjoying again the breadth of technology that we have access to. A couple of conversations this past week. People were talking with me and I said, you know, S3 is my favorite serverless service. And they're like, wait, S3? Isn't it Lambda that's serverless? Well, actually, there's a whole lot more to it, right?
I'm doing a breakout session on Thursday for best practices, and I literally start with it by saying, when you look at the history of serverless, people think it started in 2014 with Lambda, but S3 and SQS were in 2006. Before EC2, and then I have a big slide which goes, the cloud was born serverless.
Yes, it is though. It really is. I have often said that serverless is really the true cloud native approach, right?
That's the idea. I mean, I know we'd reInvent, but I mean, other cloud providers had the same kind of thing. Actually, renting virtual machines came later because they also knew that you wanted these abstracted developer experiences to build applications. But of course, you've got to bring other people with you, and so you have virtual
That's more of a stepping stone, which AWS has always been really good at doing, is building all of those stepping stones toward the end goal. But I really see the end goal of most architectures these days really should be serverless. There's, especially as time goes on, less and less of the stuff that is that you're building in a system is not possible with serverless. And it's also interesting that Lambda itself is getting de-emphasized because more and more of what you would have done with Lambda as glue, you can actually push off to services or service integrations or filtering or whatever, right?
It's this interesting thing. I, in fact, had a question when I was doing a talk somewhere, and somebody said, doesn't, for example, the Lambda service get annoyed with the step functions team because the step functions team comes out with a SDK integration? That means you need more Lambda, you need less Lambda functions. It's like, no, there isn't that sort of internal competition because Lambda's getting bigger and broader and does a whole bunch of other things in the data processing and Graviton for ARM processing and costing. Lambda does a huge amount more kind of things. Step functions if it makes you better, and sort of the I don't want to use the sort of customer focused term of what's going to be the best for the job. So that's always going to evolve.
Well, I mean, AWS has always been really customer obsessed, right? Like so much focus on what does the customer need. That's, I think, one of the reasons why Lambda came to being in the first place. But it's
that step jump into the future.
But it's also, I think, what drives a lot of these things forward. So it makes a lot of sense because the Lambda team wants people to succeed in the cloud in AWS, not just use lots more of Lambda, right? It's not about execution invocations of Lambda. It's really about solving business problems at scale, especially, and robustly, and that's what Lambda offers, right? So
any announcements that have come out already that have piqued your interests or things that you're looking at?
Yeah, so I mean, today's stuff about generative AI was pretty interesting. I know that the Amazon Q is, there was a lot of integration across wide space, and that I think is really interesting. because I think that that'll really come into play. Like it'll be more useful, not just like a niche over here, or like you can, if you remember, you go and then use that. But the integration with the daily experience all throughout what you're building, I think is a really powerful thing.
I also love that as well, because I think AWS has so many different services, and they're all part of the way AWS comes up with things so quickly is there are different teams doing it.
Yeah.
And you think the speed that generative AI has happened this year, we get to have that integration across, and the fact that although we announced a whole bunch of different services and capabilities, it was all bundled in this Gen AI stack.
Yeah.
Because it's thought of as a cohesive thing, and you're going to use different bits and pieces of it. And even the whole Amazon queue, it started with developers all able to use it in your IDE, for business intelligence, for all these other kind of things, and that was all sort of part of the same story, which I liked.
Yeah. Another thing that stood out to me was the Bedrock guardrails, because I think that guardrails are a really important part of the whole, how do we go from the idea of generative AI to the practicality of generative AI? Because we know that generative AI is a super powerful technology that's going to change a ton of stuff. But to go from the concept to the implementation takes a jump, and the reputational risk, or the it's not very good for the world risk
or even cost, or even all those kind of things.
All those sorts of things.
I think guardrails, compliance and guardrails and all those kind of things have a sort of dirty or annoying kind of thing. It's not like if you're running anything production, you're going to need some kind of guardrails, and when you can automate that, and you can do it in code and it's part of the service. Yeah.
In a way, I think of guardrails as a part of the security sort of generative AI, right? You're ensuring that it's doing what it's supposed to do, not more that's then becoming harmful.
And stop the bad stuff happening.
Right. And so, because security is such a critical part, like it's a cross-cutting concern in all systems, right? So it's not
foundational building.
Yeah. So, anyways, I think that's a really important piece of the puzzle. So, a question for you: what stood out to you? What have you been interested in?
I love the Amazon Q stuff as well. I like the sort of breadth of that as well. I think it's also early days in Reinvent. There's stuff coming out.
I hear some interesting things.
Also, because I do a lot of stuff with serverless and do a lot of stuff with Lambda as well. I've loved some of the announcements of that. The Lambda scaling that is just per function 1,000 every 10 seconds.
Oh my,
And some people are telling me, like, seriously, do we need to solve that problem? And they're like, well, there are lots of things to solve, but we've got customers who are running massive workloads in Lambda, and we're bumping up against that. And so there's a deliberate thing this year or next year, and in fact continually, is some of those small little annoyances to just get rid of them. So one of them is the Lambda scaling. Sorry, you say
no, go ahead.
Things like we've got cross-account Kinesis and Kafka. So many people using Kinesis in a shared account. Just a simple thing. Now you can connect Lambda to that across an account. SQS scaling, Kafka scaling as well with Lambda. Yes, I mean, that was a whole sort of bundle of just scaling things. And the whole point is just make it easier, make it more understandable, and hopefully we'll chip away at some of those things. Because Lambda's getting a really big service because it does a whole bunch of kind of things, and we're hoping to sort of evolve it and make something simple.
I love it. I mean, there's been so much progress on making Lambda and the rest of the serverless services fit for the circumstances that people are bumping up against, right? So people keep saying, oh, I can't use serverless, I can't use Lambda or whatever because of X. And so then AWS says, well, let's fix X. And so that's why SnapStart last year, for example, right? It has made a dramatic impact on cold starts, and then the scaling, like basically the slope of the scale that's happening now. I mean, this is really good stuff because it's addressing real circumstances.
And even earlier this year, there was some entirely valid concern about that. We were getting really behind in the language runtime releases.
Okay.
So actually, we were doing a huge amount of work behind the scenes to speed that up. And so we've come out with, I think, 5 or 6 different language runtimes. I mean, Node has come out, Java's come out, and Python's coming out soon. The new Python 3.12. We had 3.11 that was already come out for Python. And the plan is from within 60 days to come out with the new language runtime releases. And even from Python 3.10 to 3.11, just with the Python language, people are seeing 30% performance improvement in the Lambda functions. And all they're doing is just upgrading a runtime. And on Lambda, you need to ensure that your libraries are compatible. But otherwise, change the runtime, done.
That's amazing. And I mean, 60 days, you said? Like, that's the time frame? That's amazing. And I mean, I know that it's gotten a lot faster over the years. We were using Lambda back in 2016, and it was, there was a little more delay when it was coming to runtime
updates. That time is just because we don't know. And sort of some of the Lambda runtimes to come out, and they do have weird things. And it's when I do with Lambda, I mean, there have been recent node issues. So yeah, it's just node issues with performance and SSL.
Yeah.
So somebody on the pass.
All good.
That's all good.
It's a live event. This is the way it is.
See a cameo on.
Yeah.
So last question. reInvent 2024 is coming. You can wave a magic wand today
Ooh.
for AWS to do something next year.
Oh man,
that could be.
Oh, what could it be for reInvent 20?
You can't cheat. And just
Next year. So
all services.
Oh man, I mean, there's just so much innovation that keeps happening all over the place. I know that there's going to continue to be more generative AI. There's going to continue to be more serverless services. I think that it's not revolutionary to say that more of sort of the same of filling in more of those concerns that people keep having, I think is such an important part of making the serverless architectures that we're building more acceptable and accessible to more people. I think that is really aggressively working on the accessibility of serverless architectures. I think
a better experience as well.
Yeah.
Being able to do more stuff locally in your IDE along with the console.
Yeah.
With a bit of Gen AI help as well.
Absolutely, right? I mean, Gen AI is definitely going to be included in all of that, and I can't even imagine all of the different possibilities of how it'll play out. But there are so many of them.
And even today, I mean, to be honest, there are some rough edges with all Gen AI things.
Oh, yeah.
It's not going to necessarily do the right thing, but you know, it's such an amazing helping start just to have a little friendly person on your shoulder helping you with some code.
Right, and so it's the way that we interact with that tool that really makes such a big difference, right? Is understanding the tool so that we can use it effectively. That's really the same thing as all of the other tools. It's just that this tool happens to be pretty different than the expectations that we've had with the really predictable, consistent ones of the past. So anyway, yeah.
I super appreciate the time today.
I do
too. Lovely jackets.
Well, thank you.
I'm very jealous. So yeah, thank you so much. We'll have more interviews on serverless video. Enjoy the rest of the
Thank you so much as well. Appreciate everything you do.
Cheers.
Thank you.